This might be a little bit of a controversial video for some. I'm going to be talking about whether or not we're really using our talents in the church, in our career, to glorify God at the level that we can be. Sometimes we choose instead to wait on tables. Keep watching and I'll explain exactly what I mean by that and help us come to an understanding of how Jesus would have addressed where the best place is to serve. Hi, my name is Shawn Sommerkamp, and this is Motivationeer Christian Coaching. I post 2 videos a week, so please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you can be reminded when I do. Please also consider becoming a member at Motivationeer.com. Your membership really supports this channel. Thank you. So what I mean by the title and this idea, the euphemism about waiting on tables, comes from Acts chapter 6. It's the section where the disciples come to Peter and say, hey, we could use your help. There are widows who are being overlooked in the daily distribution of food. Peter says something that's kind of surprising. He said, should I neglect the word of God to wait on tables? Now remember, all throughout the Old Testament, all throughout Jesus' ministry, where Peter followed along right with them, he was in his inner circle of 3, God talked about serving the poor and the needy, especially looking out for widows and orphans. And here it seems like Peter is ignoring a very important pious act, serving widows, to go do something else. Now, the something else in this case was preaching the word of God. And yet, in order to go do that, he chose to ignore another very important, very spiritual, very righteous, very commanded act, serving the poor and the needy. Interestingly, he uses this phrase, wait on tables. Now, for us today, we might read what he said and look at it as him being condescending to waiters, or he wasn't. He just used that as a phrase. We read a little bit too much into it. But the idea is a whole bunch of very spiritual people that wanted to serve God and believed that very much that they were obeying God, asked him to step in and help serve in some way. This happens to us all the time. You have talent that a lot of people in your local fellowship don't have. And yet sometimes you're being asked to do things that many other people could also do. But those people could not do your job or use your skills the way that you do. On my website, in my membership section, I did a very long video about this, waiting on tables. It's about an hour and a half, where 30-40 minutes is teaching, and then I do a lot of Q&A with about 100 people from all over the globe discussing this very important topic. Please go check that video out. You're going to love it. The idea, though, is we really want to be careful that we're not doing the seemingly pious while ignoring the true gifts that we have. It says specifically in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10, that everyone should use the gifts that they have in order to serve others. Very interestingly, it says gifts. It doesn't say everybody should do what they're asked to do at church because you've been asked to do it. But we as Christians, we carry around kind of a guilt complex that if we're not willing to get our hands down in the mud and do the most menial of tasks, then we aren't being righteous. We're being arrogant or prideful. If you are being arrogant or prideful, then definitely go and serve in that way. What I'm talking about is making sure you're focused on using your gifts. If you have a gift that other people don't have, and that gift could be leveraged for much greater things, at church, yes, but I'm also talking about at work. You could be one of those people who have that amazing career, earning a lot of money to fund growth initiatives at church. Think about that. If you're spending all of your time working the sound system at church, if you don't mind me saying, or you're a backup singer for the worship service, or you're the head usher and you're constantly organizing ushers and things. There's lots of stuff that I've done over the years that a lot of other people could do that couldn't really do what I was able to do. There's another example of this captured in Matthew 26, Mark 14, and Luke 7. It's the story about Jesus being at a person's home. It was Simon the leper, one of the three places captures this. When a woman came in, had a very expensive jar of alabaster perfume, broke it, poured it on Jesus' feet, and wiped it with her hair. In Matthew and Mark, it says the people, or the disciples, it says vaguely the people in one and the disciples, rebuked the woman, saying, you could have sold that alabaster jar and with that money go serve the poor, but instead you wasted it by just dumping it on Jesus' feet. Which Jesus said, which I think is so remarkable. He said, wait a minute, she's done a beautiful thing. And then he says the controversial, the poor you will always have with you. What? Jesus is saying, hey, serve me before the poor? We're missing the point here. The idea that I'm trying to get across, and I won't get into the theology of why Jesus said what he said specifically, but there's a whole bunch of very righteous, religious, spiritually minded people who looked at this service that she was doing, that she herself felt she was the only one qualified to do, maybe, or at least felt compelled in that moment to do it, to break the jar and pour it on his feet. They rebuked her, thinking that what she was doing was not a righteous or pious act. This happens to us all the time as Christian professionals. We sometimes get rebuked or admonished or chastised for focusing on our career in a way that we can make a profound impact on this world, raising up in the chain of command, overseeing thousands of employees, instilling the word of God in their lives and the lives of their family through our work, because we won't serve a specific, really not that important of a function at church. We're going to always have people, the poor, so to speak, to do those tasks. Very interestingly, in Numbers chapter 8, verse 25, we see a passage where at the age of 50, the priests were asked to step down and let younger priests step in and do the duty. Now, they could still stand guard, I think. I forget what the other little thing was, which we want to still do. But there comes a time when it's best to let the next generation do those servant-type tasks. Now, we are supposed to serve others, which, as I said in a recent video I did, maybe the one right before this, volunteer. We want to volunteer to help the poor and the needy. That's so important. But the repetitive, ongoing, duty-type tasks at church that lots of other people have plenty of skill and ability to do, we don't want to be the ones to wait on the tables, to sell the alabaster jar of perfume. We want to take something that's very unique to us that we have, not neglect that gift, and use it in a way that's going to glorify God exponentially more. As controversial as this might be for some people, I do ask, pray about it, get lots of advice. And remember, sometimes the people that we ask advice of are in positions where they don't really understand the corporate world, having a professional career outside of, per se, church. They're really focused on just growing the church numbers, and they might not best understand. So get a few elders involved who tend to have professional careers themselves with the lead pastor and get some advice together. I'm not saying just go be a rogue. That's not what those two passages in Acts 6 and Matthew, Mark, and Luke that I referenced talk about. Get advice, but just consider, pray about it. Are you using the gifts God's given you to exponentially grow the kingdom and make that impact? Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for 2 new videos each week. Tell me in the comments below about your career situation, and I'll make a video for you with a shout out. You can also become a member at Motivationeer.com. Your career is not just a way to make a living, it's a way to transform